David here from the world-famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, and you're about to catch the replay of the curious uses of clearing accounts with QuickBooks Online, a webinar that I did, proudly sponsored by Webgility. My friend John May and I got together to present you with this concept of clearing accounts, how they can be used, and of course in the second half of the webinar, we'll extensively cover the e-commerce use cases, and John's going to show you just how beautifully Webgility is set up to handle these. In the meantime, let's get started, and don't forget to check the description of this video for links to any resources mentioned or referenced. And if there's anything you're looking for that you're not finding, then please reach out to us in the comments, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that you can get access to whatever you need. Okay, so the curious uses of clearing accounts with QuickBooks Online. Again, the obvious use case is the e-commerce accounting workflow. But we're going to talk about some other use cases first, and then at around 8:30 this morning, I'm going to turn it over actually to my friend John May from Webgility, and we're going to talk about the e-commerce use case for clearing accounts, and you're going to get a look at how nicely Webgility handles this. It's the main reason why I love Webgility so much is its incredible flexibility with respect to how easily you're able to map as many clearing accounts as you want. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about one of the earliest use cases I had for clearing accounts personally was when I first switched to QuickBooks Online. And you might know this, that in QuickBooks Desktop, there was one distinction between how it handled this one area that QuickBooks Online didn't deal with as nicely. And I'm going to share my screen so I can kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here. And what I'm talking about is if we're taking credit card payments, right? So this is the case of the negative deposit, right? I've broken the today's material down into the different cases. So this first part, it's like a mystery to solve. The case of the negative deposit. Now, in QuickBooks Desktop, you would receive payments in undeposited funds. And if you issued a refund, and on a particular day, your refund amounts exceeded the actual payment amounts, you had, in effect, a negative deposit. And you could check them all off in undeposited funds in the Make Deposit screen, and it would come out to a negative amount, and you could effectively record that negative deposit, and QuickBooks Desktop could handle it. At first, QuickBooks Online could not. It would not let you record a negative deposit. It can now, but I still like this workflow better, which is why I decided to share it with you. So just to illustrate an example, so let's say I've got a payment in today's batch of $250 and another one of $350, right? Let's get a total down here real quick. Okay, and then let's say I have a $750 refund, right? So I have a net negative $150. Now, again, normally I would, and even now in QuickBooks Online, I could receive these payments and this negative $750 when I create a refund receipt. It will, and assuming I choose the credit card payment method, then it will show up through undeposited funds as a negative amount. That can be checked off with these. And using the undeposited funds in the payments to deposit area, I can achieve this negative $150 deposit, which of course is going to show up in the bank account as a check. But I'll show you my workflow. I still like it better. And in general, I just don't like undeposited funds. I'm going to switch over to a different company file for this part. Especially if you've ever dealt with a company where you had lots and lots of payments in undeposited funds, it's just plain unwieldy to work with. Whereas using a clearing account, I have all the benefits of having everything detailed in a register, which can be reconciled to zero to confirm that it's clearing out properly. And then all the features that I can use without any of the limitations of undeposited funds. If you've ever looked in the payments to deposit area of undeposited funds in QuickBooks Online, once the number of payments that are in there goes beyond, I forget what it is, maybe 10 or 20 transactions, you have to literally click to go on to another page. And there's no way to filter that. You can sort it, but you can't filter it. So if things, let's say even on the same day, span several pages, you're in trouble. It's not going to be easy. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to first go to the chart of accounts. And my approach to this has changed over the years. Originally, I would set these clearing accounts up as other current assets, but I've learned that it's advantageous to set them up as bank accounts. Why not? It gives you the ability to create expenses or deposits and whatever other kinds of transactions that you can use in a bank account that you can't use in any other type of account, right? So let's quickly create a new account. We're going to do a bank account. We'll put it under bank accounts. And for this, we'll call it payment clearing. right? Just something nice and generic. And tax form selection, we'll call it cash on hand. That's fine. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to receive payments. I don't know if there's any outstanding invoices on this set of books. So if not, I'll just create 3 invoices very quickly. Okay, let's go to open invoices. We've already got some negative stuff in here. This is a sample file, obviously, that's got stuff from other videos and webinars that I've done. So fine, let's just create a new invoice. And I'll just pick any customer, it doesn't matter. We'll call it plumbing customer. Okay, we'll ignore that. And I'll just do something simple. Here's plumbing materials. Okay, and what did I say? I'm just going to group these two just to keep it quick and simple in the interest of time. So we'll say that was for 600. Okay, save and new. And I'm going to do an invoice for 750 so that I can then, what do you call it, process the payment and then the refund receipt for that. Okay, so another one from plumbing customer. We'll do services, 750. Let's backdate this just for sort of context. Let's say it was from December. And I'll just save this. And then I'm going to receive payment on it. Okay, I think I have to refresh it to get that option to come up now that it's been saved. And I've lost it, literally. Let's try that again. There we go. Wait a minute. I want my invoice for 750. Okay, we've got that. That's being backdated. Call it the 15th, save and close. And then we're going to refund that money today, right? So we're going to do a refund receipt. For a plumbing customer. T for today. You all know that by now, I think, maybe, I hope. Okay. And that was for the services, for the clean out. 750. Okay, and now we have to choose the clearing account, right? So we're going to do payment clearing on this instead of undeposited funds. Okay, payment method, I don't care for this purpose, but obviously this would be a credit card. And we're going to do save and close. Okay, and then we're going to receive payments on the other 2 invoices. So something I like to do just to keep my place, as I'm sure many of you do as well, is, just use different tabs. So this way, while I'm doing something like this, I just want to keep the open invoices report open so I can kind of focus on it. There's my plumbing customer. So I want to receive these, just the $600 payment. The $435 was something else. So we're going to receive the $600 payment. Okay, now we're also going to put this in the payment clearing. And close it. Now that's cleared up, and let's go to the balance sheet. Okay, there's my payment clearing for the net negative 150, just as I illustrated here. All right, so we had $600 worth of invoices. We had a refund of 750, and nets out to negative 150. When this batch processes, we're just going to see an entry in the bank account for negative 150. And now all we have to do is book that against this payment clearing, because we've dealt with the refunds, we've dealt with the payments received, we've grouped them in this payment clearing account. It's just a nice clean workflow this way. So let's go record the expense. Okay, this is going to come out of the bank account. The payee would be whatever our merchant processing company is, right? And over here, it's going to be payment clearing. Okay, and the amount is going to be 150. Save and close. And of course, payment clearing zeroes out. And of course, what we would do if it was the end of the month and we were done recording all this activity is we'd reconcile that account just like any other bank account. Payment clearing, ending balance is always going to be zero. Let's say it's the end of January, 1/31/23. Start reconciling and go away and go away. This is like painful. And boom, boom, boom. And now reconcile. And so this is what I do with any clearing account I use for any purpose. This is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use it to group things, to group transactions in a way that I need to so that they net out to the exact amount that's running through the bank account. And then I record the entry through the bank account directly against that clearing to zero out. To me, this is a much easier dialog to work with, the reconciliation screen, versus trying to use that payments to deposit dialog that you have to use when you're making a deposit and using undeposited funds. This is so much cleaner. Plus, now I can go into the register for this payment clearing account, just like I could do with any bank account register or any asset account for that matter. And I can use the filters here to quickly find and isolate transactions. To me, it's the perfect way to be able to record transactions in the fullest amount of detail, which is what I'm all about, especially when it comes to bulletproof books, and have access to the information that I want and need at my fingertips without the limitations that I find, frankly, frustrating with the undeposited funds account. So that is the case of the negative deposit. Let's see, I don't see any questions in the Q&A, and I don't see anything in the chat. So we will move on then to the case of the business owner who co-mingled funds. Okay, so let's get into that. And I have videos on both of these, by the way, on YouTube, which, in the follow-ups, I'll send you the link so you can access those videos. And that will probably be helpful. Now, when it comes to co-mingling funds, I do this a little bit differently. You can do it kind of the same. I'll give you the choice. You decide which one you like better. With co-mingling funds, we're talking about the business owner who, let's say, in a better use case, I think, they spend their money personally on something on behalf of the business, right? So they use a personal credit card to pay for something that's for the business. When that situation comes up, we're going to treat it like an expense report. And the best way that I found to do that is by using a credit card account type as the clearing account for that, right? So what does that look like? I may even have an example on this set of books. So let me just go to my chart of accounts real quick. Now we'll look at the credit cards. I don't. So we'll create it really quick. I really like this workflow for this purpose. So if I go into, not there, I need to create a new account. New. And we're going to do credit cards. Put it under credit cards. Now, by the way, structurally, I'm moving quickly because I want to illustrate, and I don't want to kind of waste your time watching me do things you probably already well know how to do, like adding new accounts. But when it comes to the clearing accounts, what I will usually do is in the bank account section, I'll create a bank account called clearing accounts, and any clearing accounts I set up for different purposes will be sub-accounts of that bank account. That keeps them segregated and subtotaled on the balance sheet, which makes it nice and clean and clearly distinguished from what's in our actual operating funds, and that becomes usually very important. Not from just from a presentational standpoint, but from a very practical standpoint, as in, hey, client, here's how much money you've actually got in the bank. The stuff that's in the clearing account it's clearing. It's not in your bank account yet, hence it's in the clearing stage, right? So I like to do that. Normally I do that here. I would create a credit card account and call it expense reports. I'm not going to spend the time doing that now for tax form selection. We only have one choice there, but I'm going to call it, let's say I'm the business owner, Seth David expenses. And so in this scenario, we're treating it the way we would treat any employee who advanced money personally on behalf of the business and needs to get reimbursed. Okay, so we create a credit card account and save. Okay, and so now what happens, what I can do is, first of all, and again, I have a video on this, which will give you a much more detailed walkthrough of what I'm about to show you very succinctly now. But essentially, I can add an expense, and the payment account is going to be Seth David Expenses. Okay, the payee could be, I don't know, the 99-cent store. Okay, I'll just add that vendor really quick. No, I don't know why they didn't just assume I wanted the company name to be the vendor display name, but okay. Okay, and then the category might be office supplies. All right, I didn't have that. I had administrative expenses. Okay, here I'll put office supplies. The amount, let's say, was $150. Now, the key here is I want to put something in here that lets me know what payment method I use. Now, we can do it using the actual payment method field, because remember, this is a personal payment method. And what I'm thinking about here that most people don't think about in my experience is the audit trail. So if a year from now I'm being questioned on this, and I need to be able to prove to an auditor or anyone else for that matter, that this money was in fact spent and that it was on behalf of the business. First of all, of course, I need the receipt, and that should be scanned and documented somewhere in our files. But if I'm trying to trace the audit trail back to the source of the transaction, I want to put something in here that lets me know paid for with personal B of A Visa dash 1234, right? The ending 4 digits of the account number. Just putting this in here, when I pull this up in a transaction detail report, I'll see this in the memo. And of course, the date would be the exact date that the charge was placed on that payment method. So in an instant, I can go pull up my personal records, pull up that credit card statement, and show that hopefully the transaction's been highlighted. I also have the digital copy of the receipt, if not the original. So I can prove to somebody, yes, I used my personal card. These are office supplies I paid for. You can tell because it's itemized on the receipt that they're actually office supplies and not something that couldn't be office supplies. And so I've got my audit trail perfectly in place. And when I save and close this, what I wind up with on the books is a liability exactly as it should be as an expense report, right? So if I go down here to the credit card accounts, and again, I would put this in its own section separate from the actual credit cards. But here it shows I've got essentially an expense report of $150 that's due and payable to the owner. And now, of course, if the owner comes back and says, I don't need to get reimbursed, first of all, I would encourage them, let me reimburse you. You can always put the money back into the business account afterwards, but that keeps it nice and clean. But worst case, the business owner is adamant they don't want to do that, then I can just create an entry. I can create a credit card credit that closes this out to owner contributions, right? And let me just very quickly show you what that would look like. So if I go to it is going to be a credit card credit under vendors. Okay, the payee would be, doesn't really matter, it would be me, but let's just leave that blank. This is going to be on the Seth David expenses, and down here we're going to put contributions. All right, we'll call it shareholder 1. And put personal expenses advanced for various items, because it may be more than just office supplies for the month. Oops. It just keeps kicking me out of here. Very, very annoying. All right, let's try it the slow way. Of January 2023. See how detailed I am in my memo? The idea is I'm not going to remember this. In a year from now, I'm not going to remember what I did. I want to make sure it's very clear to somebody who has no clue what I did, right? And this is going to be for $150, credit card credit. The date would probably be January 31st, but I'll leave it as today's date for now, so it looks nice and clean on the balance sheet. And I'll save and close. And sure enough, my expenses are now zeroed out, and we will see it included here in contributions shareholder 1. I'll just drill in, and sure enough, there it is. Okay, I have one more use case that I want to talk about that's not directly related to e-commerce. And then I'm going to turn things over to my friend John here, and we're going to talk about e-commerce and Webgility. So why credit card instead of cash bank? Because the credit card shows it as a proper liability, so it looks more like an expense report, which is the way we're treating it. Now, the other use case is where they use business funds to pay for something personal. And typically what we've all done is just book that stuff as a distribution, which, by the way, if you get audited by the IRS, that's not going to fly, not that well, not that easily. So you really want to discourage your clients from doing it that way. If they do any commingling, it should be by paying for something out of personal means that's for the business. As soon as you start paying for things with business funds, that's really for personal stuff, especially if it's an S Corp, it's much cleaner to book it as a loan. And Heidi, exactly where I was going, you can, and my video shows you this. On the credit card method, I can pull a CSV file from my personal credit card statement. I can rip out all the lines that aren't for the business and then just import the ones that are, and boom, it's in like minutes. I have a whole month's worth of business expenses that were paid for with personal means, and it's there in the credit card. It's there as a liability. So again, we're treating it just like an expense report, and then we can either reimburse the owner or reclassify it to contributions. When it goes the other way, you can still use this, but going in the other direction, the credit card will end up being a negative liability or an asset, because again, the money's just kind of going in the opposite direction. And again, I would discourage clients from doing this very, very much. So, okay, next, final use case. And at this point, I'm pretty sure you can kind of visualize what this all looks like. So Upwork, right? If any of you have ever used Upwork, or any of these other kind of freelance services, then what do? You might hire a graphic designer and 2 other people. And in the same month, all their charges are going to accrue in your Upwork account. And then Upwork is going to charge you the fees, and they're going to charge you for the labor. And you're going to get one transaction pulled out of your bank account that represents a lot of more detailed stuff that went on inside of Upwork. So if you go to Upwork, you can actually download a CSV file. And with that CSV file, if there's a lot of volume, you can import it, just like we talked about with the personal credit card expenses. You can import that file, but bottom line is you'll create a clearing account called Upwork Clearing or something like that. And you'll describe all the detailed Upwork activity, all the people you paid, what you paid them for, the amounts that you paid them. You'll also book the Upwork fees. That's simply going to be a payment out of the Upwork account booked to some kind of Upwork fee expense account. So that's going to get added on top of what you paid the people, to your total balance in Upwork. And that's going to add up to the exact amount that's coming out of your bank account. So it's the exact same process where your bank account amount will clear out with the detailed activity that's in Upwork. And once again, you can reconcile that to zero. So again, I have a video on that, which will give you the whole detailed process of how to set that up. But I think with what I've shown you so far this morning, it's probably pretty clear exactly what that's going to look like and how that works. Most importantly, we have the e-commerce use cases. So I'm going to switch over to my Bulletproof Bookkeeping for e-commerce company really quick. And I'm just going to illustrate something for you as far as how this really comes together in the e-commerce workflow. So if I go to my chart of accounts here, we have sales channels. So each sales channel gets its own clearing account. So if you're thinking debits and credits, we debit the sales channel and we credit income, right? So if I sell a product, then I've got an item that is mapped to an income account. And when I use that in a sales receipt or on an invoice, that's what's getting the credit. We're crediting income. The debit goes to whatever account that money is being sort of deposited to. If we're using a sales receipt, there's a deposit to drop down. If you're using an invoice, it's going to go right into accounts receivable. We don't normally use invoices unless, in fact, we aren't getting paid for it until later. And in that case, we receive the payment, and the payment is dealt with at that time. But focusing on the e-commerce model specifically, the assumption is the sale happens right now. So we're using sales receipts. And in the sales receipt, the deposit to is going to go into whatever sales channel it is where that sale took place, right? So in effect, we're debiting the sales channel clearing and we're crediting the income account. Then we deal with the payments. Now, some sales channels, it's very straightforward. Amazon processes its own payments for you. So with Amazon, I only need the one sales channel clearing account because Amazon handles a sale, processes the payment. It goes from there directly to the bank account. But eBay, I'm likely using PayPal as a payment method, but I can use other payments. So the bottom line is the money has to clear from each sales channel to potentially 2 or more payment method clearing accounts. So once I've booked all the payments from all the payment methods that were used for a particular sales channel, that sales channel clearing account should zero out. At this stage, I am crediting the sales channel clearing and debiting a payment method clearing. So money's moving from the sales channel to the payment method. Then when I get to the payment method, I'm going to deal with the fees. So that's why all these notice are set up as bank accounts. So I'm going to deal with the fees in PayPal or Stripe or Shopify or whatever it is. I'm going to deal with the fees, and then that net amount, of course, sweeps up to the bank accounts. So that's a very, very quick run through of the e-commerce accounting workflow. What I wanted to really share with you today for this part is what my friend John May here at Webgility is going to be talking about. One of the reasons when I designed the e-commerce course that I've really limited the amount of apps and solutions I'm presenting to you in that course is I've learned 2 things. One, if I present you with too many options, it just confuses you. 2, I've learned from the feedback I've gotten from many of you over many years now that most of you seem to prefer if I just tell you this is the solution I think you should use. And for the e-commerce sales channel use case, Webgility is without a doubt that solution, and John's going to show you why. I just showed you very quickly the process of managing all the clearing accounts from sales to payment method and then into the bank account. Webgility is the only app that I've seen that gives you the flexibility to handle it at this level of detail. Most other apps, you'll find you have to come up with workarounds and consolidated clearing accounts because you don't have the flexibility that Webgility gives you. That's why I love Webgility so much. And bonus, Webgility also handles the inventory management piece. So as time allows, John is going to show you what that looks like. I am going to shut up and give myself a break. And just real quick, if you're wondering who John is, he's the video engagement manager at Webgility, where he actually produces a regular series on YouTube to help multi-channel e-commerce sellers expand their business through automation. He got his start at Webgility on the implementation team, so he's a product expert as well and enjoys helping customers solve his pain points. And again, he's going to show you how beautifully Webgility handles the accounting workflow with its ability to keep a separate clearing account for each sales channel and each payment method. And this is exactly what we want. So John, thank you so much for agreeing to take the time and being here with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for the wonderful intro, Seth. And I'm super grateful that you've had us on here today. And I'm hoping that I can give you guys all the information you need to hopefully tie all these scenarios together and show you kind of exactly what Webgility excels at. So let me share my screen. All right, so I skipped the whole login process, but just to log in, if you were using our Webgility Online plan, you just go to unified.webgility.com. There's also a link on our homepage at webgility.com. But at its core, Webgility is an e-commerce accounting automation software. So we either if you're in our Webgility Online or our desktop version of the software, we will once you've connected your online store, your sales channel, we'll take that information in whatever orders you've processed and post it to accounting for you. You can do that either manually or once everything's set up, do that automatically, kind of run it on a timer. But I wanted to show you guys just like the general user interface, where everything is at, and then tie in some of those clearing account and payment method mapping scenarios that Seth had talked about. So when you first log in, you'll be taken to the dashboard. The dashboard gives you kind of like an at-a-glance, top-down view of all of your current happenings in the store. You will see that if you have more than one store connected, you can switch between them. I only have one Shopify connected right now, so we're only going to see the one, but you can filter by the store, by the sales channel that you want to look at. And then, of course, you can filter by on this dashboard by month, by day, by quarter, whatever you want. So this is kind of, again, just more of an at-a-glance view of everything that's going on, but you can sort of drill down into your orders and refunds here as well. So if you hover over the accounting tab, you can see your orders and refunds. So this will show any orders that have been downloaded but maybe not posted yet. So you'll see a bunch of different tabs up here at the top for new orders, orders with errors, posted, ignored, and deleted. Orders with errors would mean that we tried to post them to QBO or QBD and ran into an issue. So if you see any here, you could open the order up, see what the error was, and kind of fix it before trying to post again. Posted, self-explanatory. You'll see any posted orders or anything that has actually successfully posted to QuickBooks. And then ignored would be stuff that you don't want to post, maybe test orders or something like that you wanted to just test the functionality for, and then obviously delete it. For the product portion of the software here, we've got a product catalog that allows you to see both products in QuickBooks and inside of your store. So you'll see a number of tabs just like under the order section. The not in QuickBooks tabs will show you anything that's in your store, but we could not find the corresponding item within QuickBooks. Same thing with the not in store, kind of the vice versa. Anything that's in QuickBooks that we couldn't find in your store. So we'll look for both the item in QuickBooks and the item in your sales channel to determine if we can find the same item. A lot of times we're looking at the SKU or a product identifier, like the item name, to make that connection. And I'll show you a little bit more about that when I get into the settings. But then there's QuickBooks matched and store matched. So obviously these are going to be the same number. If you see the store matched and QuickBooks matched are both 24, that just means that we know that it's the same, most likely SKU is what we're looking at between both items on QuickBooks and the store. And then just like with orders, you can choose to ignore certain items so that Webgility doesn't try to sync or do anything with those items between QuickBooks and the sales channel respectively. It just kind of leaves them on their own. You can also, if we're not looking at the SKU specifically, or maybe you don't have the time to go and make sure that your SKUs match your item name in QuickBooks from maybe your Shopify, you can go and make that connection or that mapping manually by going to the mapping section and kind of telling Webgility what products should map to their corresponding item, either in QuickBooks or in your store. And then kind of another note on the inventory management side of things, we do have an option to sync your products. So this would be between the store price and the QuickBooks price and the store quantity and whatever you have inventory-wise in QuickBooks. Once you've set everything up correctly, kind of what I mentioned before is you can set it up to automatically sync all these things, like download your orders and post them for you, and then sync the price and inventory as well. But if you're in the process of setting things up, or maybe don't want to do things automatically, maybe you do want a little bit more control over it, you can come here and manually select what you'd like to sync. So you'd see anything in red here means that it does not match up correctly. So for these shoes, you see $79.95 is what we have in the store. $80 is what we have in QuickBooks. You can make that sync manually right here by selecting the checkbox for that item and then hitting sync. Mine is a test account, so you'll see some weird errors if I try to do things myself. But the functionality is there. You would see once you hit sync, it would remove this item completely from the screen that we're on. And then just one last thing, kind of like a more drilled down view of the analytics. If you look at the dashboard, again, it's a little bit more top level. The analytics will show you a little bit more of a holistic view for like your total sales, your total orders, sales tax, and shipping costs. And then, of course, we do have another tool that Webgility offers that allows you to look at more trending profitability reports and stuff like that. It's called our Webgility Intelligence App. But to get to more of the like scenarios that Seth had mentioned, let's go to the settings. So when you connect your store and your QuickBooks, you'll be taken through a number of steps to essentially make sure the workflow between your QuickBooks and your online store is set up how you'd like. So I'll go through all the different options that we have here just quickly so that you can kind of get a feel for what is possible and how you can set it up to really match whatever workflow you or your customer might have or your client. So first off, we can in Webgility Online, you have the ability to record every order individually as a sales receipt or as a journal entry. And you'll see that between these two options, the options you have up here at the top kind of change. So looking at every order individually as a sales receipt, you'll see that you can change, you have a lot more granularity in how you decide how you want things to post into QuickBooks. So just at a glance, you can change your deposit to account. So just like Seth mentioned, we don't like to use undeposited funds. This list will look at everything that you have in your QuickBooks Online account. So if we're working with an Amazon account, you have an Amazon clearing account, you can select that. Or in this case, we have a Shopify account, so we want to use Shopify clearing. Some more granularity here you have is the payment method. So you can select that we record the payment method based on whatever is at the store. And then kind of another option you have is to record differently based on the transaction type. And the transaction type can be any of the three, which is payment method, order status, and currency based. Payment method is going to be probably the most popular method that's used. And this is where you can go and map based on the payment method how you want it to record into QBO. So you'll see things like the shipping date, if you have specific terms, the transaction date.
John, we've got a question in the Q&A real quick. Yeah. Alexa wants to know if this works with Etsy. That's the first part of the question.
Mm-hmm.
It does work with Etsy.
We have an integration with Etsy directly. Some of the functionality between the different stores is going to change. Like Shopify, we can upload variants of items like a size or a color of a shirt or something like that. Whereas Etsy or some of the more, I guess, smaller carts or marketplaces doesn't have that same exact functionality. But let's see, the second part of your question, can it work when each item is unique, for example? Yes. So in that case, in the example that I gave where we're looking for the item to be matching via like your SKU, you probably aren't going to have a SKU, or if you do, it's going to be different for every item. You can make that super easy by using our transfer software, or like our product transfer tool, so that if you create your item in QuickBooks first, or vice versa, if you create it in your Etsy first, you can transfer it to whichever, I guess, whichever software doesn't have it yet, so that the item is created there, and we know that they're the same item, so they will match. So you kind of cut a little bit of the work down there. You don't have to create it in both places, if that makes sense. And let me know if that didn't answer your question completely, but cool. So as you can see, there's a number of different options that you can assign for each payment method, just in case you had like maybe some specific, I guess, workflow for, we'll say, American Express. Like on the memo, you maybe don't want it to include the online order. You want it to include the order notes or something like that. So you have a lot of granularity for how you want to post your transactions from your store to QuickBooks here. And again, this will pull, generally, this is going to pull everything that exists on your online store. So if you have a number of different payment methods, we'll pull in whatever we can see. And if you do want to just record it as a single transaction type, that is an option as well. If you just want to deposit everything to a single clearing account for that store, rather than going into each payment method type, you can do that as well. So a lot of options. And then to get even further into it, kind of more on the product side of things, you can identify how we pull in your products and how we identify those products as well. So like I said, generally, if we're looking at your sales channel, we'll look at either the SKU or the product name. SKU is always going to be the easier option here, because it makes a unique item.
And make sure it's at least 3 letters. I found
yes.
that if it's less than 3 letters, it's it's not gonna come up in a search. So make sure your SKUs each have at least 3 letters.
Exactly. Yep. And then QuickBooks Desktop has other quirks too, with like special characters. So try to keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, over 3 letters is perfect. That's a good addition there.
Yeah.
And so you can pull in your existing products, or if maybe let's say we go to pull an order from your Shopify and we go to post it to QuickBooks and the product doesn't exist. Like you've added it to Shopify, but the product hasn't been added in inventory in QuickBooks. There's nothing in there yet for it. You can tell Webgility to create a new product with whatever we have from the store. So in this case, you kind of define some, I guess, prerequisites for the inventory to be created in QuickBooks. So if you know that, like, maybe in the question that was asked before, where you create antique items, you could work it in that you create them only on Shopify first, and then you set this workflow up to essentially mirror your workflow, or whatever inventory account needs to be set up, whatever expense account needs to be set up. So that way you don't have to create anything in QuickBooks. You just create it in Shopify, download the order, and then when it gets posted, it'll create everything for you. If you're not having to worry about inventory because it's a single unique item, this might be the most productive or most time efficient way to do it. But again, it's up to how you want to work your workflow. That's why we have so many different options, just to give you the flexibility to do whatever you'd like. For customers, it's kind of the same thing. We'll pull whatever we see in the order from the customer end and try to match it with whatever you have in accounting. So you kind of have the option here to take last name, first name, last name. The kind of caveat that I give people here is that the more criteria that you try to meet with not even just customers, but with items on your store as well, the harder it's going to be to make that match every time. So a lot of times, if you pick something complicated like first name, last name, company, chances are there's going to be some errors here and there. And instead of going to the correct customer, it's going to try and create a new customer every time something like that happens. So less is more with this sort of thing. First name, last name, and then email is always a good way to start. And then if you see that you're having issues, you can kind of change it from there. And just like the orders, we can pull in discounts and sales tax and other expenses as well. So you can connect your payment processor, you can connect your shipping processor, and in this case for discounts, generally we'll want to record them as a line item. So you'll create a line item in QuickBooks that says like Shopify discount, or if you have multiple stores, you'll create one for each sales channel. And then this is just telling us which item, and you'll see there's a lot of we do a lot of testing here, so you'll see a lot of random items. But this is just telling Webgility which item you want us to map it to, so that when you do get any discounts in an order, we map it to that specific line item in QuickBooks, and then you can run reports specifically based off of that line item to make sure that everything is balanced correctly. And the same thing with sales tax. A lot of times we recommend that you take your sales tax directly from online, because that's how you have it set up. You set up your jurisdictions in Shopify or whatever store you're using, and then we'll download whatever sales tax is in the order and post it to QuickBooks. Because a lot of times QuickBooks wants to do the work itself, and unless you have it set up exactly how you have it set up in your Shopify or your store, which is generally not going to be the case, you're going to have some mismatches here and there. So generally we recommend record all of your taxes from the online store, and we'll just pull in whatever the customer paid at the order.
Yeah, I would take that one step further and go out there and say, you never want QuickBooks Online calculating your sales tax if it's already been calculated by the sales channel, because the sales channel is the one you're going to want to rely on. That's the one that's going to give you the details you need to prove how the amount that you reported and paid was arrived at. So stick with what's on the sales channel. The only time you'd want QBO calculating it is if for some reason somehow your sales channel doesn't calculate it, which I can guarantee is almost never going to be the case.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, like I said, if you have like the perfect setup and you trust QuickBooks is exactly the same as Shopify, that could work. But generally, yeah, we recommend don't even bother with it. Just make sure you're pulling, because the customer's already paying it, right? So we'll just pull whatever the customer paid. And for more complex sales tax operations, you could use something like Avalara as well. They're kind of a partner of ours, one that we've used in the past. So if you find that maybe setting up all the jurisdictions in Shopify is a bit of a pain, or you don't know how you're going to meet Nexus in certain areas, Avalara is generally like the go-to for most of those conversations. But yeah, if you have it set up in your store, just pull it in as a line item, and we'll assign it accordingly there. One thing to note, if you use an Amazon store, and I think this is correct, but they remit and collect for, if not all 50 states, almost every single one. If you're not sure on that, I would just check which ones they might not remit on. I think they finally got all 50, but they will collect and remit for you, so you don't generally have to collect and record it yourself. You still can, though. Cool. So that is it for like the single transaction use, but I wanted to show you the general, like the journal entry summary as well. You'll see once I hit save here that the options at the top are a lot more limited. And that's because there's obviously not going to be as much granularity in how the transactions are posted or how they look. It's all about where you're mapping the accounts for specific, I guess, for your specific account mapping. So here you can see your accounts receivable, sales income, discounts, coupon codes, gift cards, everything that you need to map correctly is listed here. And the cool thing about this, I guess, option is that you'll see that you can create new accounts directly from this area. So I went in before the webinar started and created a couple testing accounts just so I could show you that they created in the QuickBooks Online account and you can use them right away. So if you maybe don't want to switch back and forth, I know it's not a huge labor in QuickBooks Online, but you can hit create new, determine if it's an income or an expense account, hit OK, and boom, it's already there. So if you really want to get granular with all of your clearing accounts, you can create your clearing accounts directly from here and map them individually so that you don't have to switch back and forth between QuickBooks Online and Webgility Online. The same functionality does exist in Webgility, our desktop software, but since we're focused more on QuickBooks Online and Webgility Online, I'll kind of just gloss over that. Same thing with payment processors. You can map the deposit account and frequency for payment processor fees, and then cost of goods sold. You'll set your currency, inventory asset account, and your cost of goods sold account. The product sync does require to be enabled here. So if you don't care about the cost of goods sold and syncing that expense, you can leave it unchecked. But once you check it, you're able to select the inventory asset and cost of goods sold. So you'll see, obviously, if you're posting as a journal entry, you don't have nearly as many options, but you can get a lot more specific with where things are routed. And then just a couple last things here for connecting your accounts. I wanted to show you guys how easy it is to connect an account. If you go to the connections option, you'll see your accounting software and then your sales channels, payment methods, and shipping. For sales channels, you can add as many as you'd like, as many as your plan allows. From here, you just select, so you can see Etsy is the option there. And then it'll take you through the options to sign in and get connected. It's really just a couple steps. Once you're connected, then it'll take you automatically to that settings area, under the accounting that I just showed you, where you'll go and kind of set up how you want it to route. And the last thing I wanted to show you is the scheduler, which is our automation tool. So automation is kind of the end-all be-all for, I guess, most tech companies now. Why do the work yourself if you can have something do it for you automatically? You'll see that these options also change depending on how you have it set up between journal entries and single transactions. Since we're in journal entries, it's just we'll sync in batches. Yes or no? Do you want us to sync? It'll sync nightly. So not a lot of options here, not a lot of, I guess, customizability, but with journal entries, you don't need it to be. Now, if we go back and set it to individual transactions, now you can see that there's a little bit of customization that's available. So rather than syncing nightly, you can do it hourly as well. And then you can tell us if you want to sync your orders or your products respectively. And the syncing of products would mean that we look at your inventory that you have in QuickBooks. If you've gotten like a new batch of inventory in and you want it to push automatically to the store, we'll catch that every hour. We'll check to see if there's new inventory in QuickBooks and sync it to whatever it should be in Shopify. And then syncing orders automatically would mean we're downloading those orders every hour and posting them to QuickBooks, depending on how you have it set up in those order posting details. Same thing with refunds. And then you have a couple other options, like if there is a $0 order, you can have it choose not to sync, or if it's a negative order, you can have it automatically sync it as a $0 order, just to make sure that it doesn't mess up your accounting. And then last couple things here, data protection. We do allow you to delete personally identifiable information. Amazon, you'll see that it doesn't include Amazon here because Amazon doesn't give you personally identifiable information. They give you like really jumbled up kind of garbage information. And then you can skip posting or deleting orders if they're not currently posted to accounting as well. So that is at a glance how Webgility Online works. Like I said, we do have a desktop version of the software that is a little bit more complicated because it pairs perfectly with QuickBooks Desktop, which is a lot more granular, a lot more complicated. But we did also, and I just checked with Linnea as well, for attending the webinar, we have a couple coupon codes, offer codes.
I just put everything in the chat.
Perfect. I actually see that. Awesome. So yeah, Nerd 15 off AN for annual plans and Nerd 15 off MO for the monthly plan. So I appreciate you guys listening to my spiel, and I'll send it back over to Seth. Let me just make sure I stop sharing. Perfect.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. So one thing I want to mention on the heels of what John just explained about the automation, what we've done when we bring on a new client and we onboard them with Webgility, first of all, I want to say that when you start with Webgility, they have an amazing onboarding process. There will be an implementation specialist. It's really good to be familiar with what John just walked you through. For those of you who are in the e-commerce course, go through my Webgility lesson there. I spend about 45 minutes to an hour going through everything that John just went through, but a little bit more slowly because I had more time. But it's really good to get familiar with that before you get with the implementation specialist, because then you'll be better informed for how to work with that implementation specialist. But either way, that implementation specialist is going to get everything set up for you. They're amazing. And as far as the automation goes, what we've always done is we start off not automating it because we want to kind of babysit it and watch it and make sure things are going exactly where we want and make sure we can confirm that clearing accounts are actually clearing out, meaning they can be reconciled to zero. And once we're comfortable that everything's flowing exactly the way we expect, then we'll turn on the automation button because, once we have that comfort level, it's like, okay, now I trust the process. It's not Webgility, it's more our implementation of Webgility that we want to be sure about. And once we reach that point where we feel like, okay, I can trust the process, then we turn on the automation because there's no sense in the whole point is to free up your time and not have to spend time getting that granular when, as John pointed out with the automation specifically, the whole idea is to have the machine do the work for you so that you can focus on the higher value things. So again, if you look in the chat, you'll see we've got a promotion for Webgility where you can get 15% off. And I've given you a coupon code that will work for either the original Bulletproof Bookkeeping Mastery course or the e-commerce course or both. And it gets you 30% off either or both of those courses. So grab that information out of the chat. I will send a follow-up email. We're doing the same webinar again on Thursday. So once that webinar is over, by the end of this week, I'll send a follow-up email to all of you with all the information, links to resources, and everything you need to be able to take what we've gone over in this hour with you and get the most out of it. And I'll stick around for like a minute if there's any questions. I don't see any, and I do have a client call where I've just let him know that I'm going to be 3 to 5 minutes late because I knew this was ending right at the top of the hour. So I'll stick around for like a minute just in case there's a quick question somebody has. And again, thank you, John. Really appreciate you showing up, and I'll see you on Thursday.
Yeah. See you on Thursday. Thanks for having me. And yeah, if for those of you that are still here, if you do end up looking into Webgility a little bit more, I make a lot of the YouTube content for Webgility. So if there's ever anything that you're maybe not clear on, we have a lot of YouTube videos that could help you kind of start to grasp things a little more if you're interested in looking at certain features. But yeah, I will see you on Thursday, Seth. Looking forward to it. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, everybody. We'll see you all very soon.